Hey folks, how's it going? Mr. Murray here, coming to you with a breakdown on the Where in the World is Carmen Candisego activity. All right, this activity, I've actually put it in order of how the slides are supposed to progress. They don't go sector 1 through sector 7. They'll go in some random order based on whether you have it right or wrong, and we'll take a look at that as well. So in this video, again, I'll break down the activity. I'll tell you what's going on with it. We'll go through the answers one by one, and you'll see what you're supposed to get. Obviously, this is very related to I believe it was a 90s TV show with a very similar name, but no relation whatsoever. All right, so let's jump into it. So how does Carmen Candisego work? So the directions say you start in sector 1, and if you go to the world map, you actually just click where it says click here, and it takes you right there. So what you're going to do in each sector, you're going to solve the absolute value inequality, and you're going to look for which clue is true. Okay, so which of the clues is true, and you're going to click on that clue based on your answer. And so you're only going to be able to catch Carmen if you visit every sector once without going back to a sector you've already been to. Okay, and then there is a possibility with the incorrect answer that Carmen will catch you and you'll need to start over. We're not going to look at that scenario because this is the answer, so we're not going to get caught, fortunately. But if it happens to you by going through the Google Slides presentation, you'll know what I mean. All right, so without further ado, let's jump into it. And we're going to start nowhere else but the best city in the world, Boston, Massachusetts. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at this clue right here, this absolute value inequality that is. We're going to try to solve it. So what we have is we have the absolute value of x plus 5, x minus 5 that is, plus 3 is less than or equal to 10. So what we're going to do on our paper, because you do need to show all work or you will not receive any credit for things that work is not shown for. You're going to get the bars alone by subtracting 3 on both sides. Okay, you're now going to ask yourself, what kind of inequality is this? And I really encourage you to take a look at my previous video where we talked about what absolute value inequalities are and how to know which is which. So I encourage you to definitely do that. So with the absolute value of x plus 5 is less than or equal to 7. So what numbers have an absolute value less than or equal to 7? So that's all the numbers that are greater than or equal to negative 7 and less than or equal to positive 7. So how do I get this alone? I plus 5, I plus 5, I plus 5, and I have 2 less than or equal to x. That is negative 2 less than or equal to x less than or equal to 12. So let's go through it. Was this an or inequality? No, it was an and inequality. Are the bars already alone? That's not true. The bars aren't alone. You had to minus 3 to get the bars alone. This inequality is not what we ended up getting. I would imagine, depending on, I would bet if you had added 3 instead of subtracted 3, that probably would have gotten you the letter 3. That's not true. And we can see letter 4 is true. So we're going to click on clue 4. Okay, clicking on clue 4 brings us to Lagos, Nigeria. Again, I do encourage you at any time to pause, rewind, watch this at your own pace. That's one of the really nice things about the video is that you have the freedom to do that. So we're going to go to Lagos, Nigeria, and we're going to solve this one right here. So again, we got to get the bars alone, and we're going to start by adding 8. So it'll come down here. Half of the absolute value of x minus 11 is more than 5 times 2 times 2. The absolute value of x minus 11 is greater than 10. What number is of an absolute value that's greater than 10? So if x minus 11 is more than 10, it will have an absolute value greater than 10. But on the other hand, if x minus 11 is less than negative 10, its absolute value will also be more than 10. So let's solve one at a time. Well, plus 11, giving me x is more than 21. the or will come down, plus 11, and x is less than positive 1. So we have x is more than 21, or x is less than negative 1. So let's break this down and see what happens. So first of all, negative infinity to infinity is not the solution. We can see that. People might think that if you didn't get the bars alone and you just said, oh, look, negative on the right-hand side, it's more than a negative, all real numbers. That's probably where that comes from, but that is not the case. 2 ends up being the answer. 3 is if you would add it as an and inequality rather than an or inequality. And 4 is, again, if you had interpreted it just based on not getting the bars alone, but you'd also flipped what it means to point towards the bars versus away from the bars. So the clue we want here is actually clue 2. Clicking on clue 2 brings us to Sao Paulo, Brazil, where we have another clue here. We're really going all around the world. So we've gone from North America to Africa. Now we're in South America. We're really doing some jet setting. So let's go ahead and we need to get the bars alone. So I'll start by adding 9. So I have 2 times the absolute value of x plus 6 is greater than or equal to 16. I'll now divide by 2, absolute value of x plus 6 is greater than or equal to 8. And now I've got to think about this. So what numbers are more than or equal to 8, or have absolute value that's more than or equal to 8? So first of all, any numbers that are greater than or equal to 8, but also any numbers that are less than or equal to negative 8, negative 9, negative 10, negative 11, and so on. Those also have an absolute value that's more than or equal to 8. Okay, so I'm going to solve one at a time. I have x is greater than or equal to 2. The or comes down. I have x is less than or equal to negative 14. So x is greater than or equal to 2, or x is less than or equal to negative 14. So let's go ahead and take a look and see which of our clues we're going to follow now. So this is not an and inequality, it's an or inequality. We know that kind of because when the bars are alone, the inequality faces the bars instead of the number on the other side. So that would be indicating an or. If it flipped the other way, that would be an and inequality. So because it's on an and inequality, that's not true. And I think if you can look here, that's kind of like if we misinterpreted the results and solved it as an and rather than an or. This third one turns out to be our answer. This fourth one does not. And I think the fourth one is a combination of getting the wrong kind of inequality in combination with not quite solving it correctly. So clue 3 is where we're going to follow. And clue 3 takes us to Brussels, Belgium. So we're going to Europe, believe it or not. Okay, so here we go. And again, feel free to pause, rewind, slow it down, speed it up, whatever's best for you. Okay, so here we're going to have to get the bars alone. First step is to minus 13 on both sides. X plus 15 is greater than or equal to negative 16. The next step is to divide by negative 2. And remember, when you divide by negative 2, that's where we got to go, oh, wait a minute, I'm dividing by a negative. So when you divide by a negative, you have to change the direction of the sign. Okay, and then you do this accordingly. You do your division out as you would, but you have to remember to change the direction of the sign. So that's going to throw off a lot of people. A lot of people are going to get the wrong kind of solution based on that. Okay, but that being said, because you're minusing 13, you're divided by net, you should end up being less than 8. Okay, so now what numbers have an absolute value that's less than 8? All of those which are greater than negative 8 and less than 8. And so to solve that, I'm going to minus 15, minus 15, minus 15. That's going to leave me at negative 23, less than x, less than negative 7. So let's go ahead and take a look. So again, a lot of people are going to say no solutions are all real numbers. If you just look and you don't get the bars alone, you're going to say all real numbers. That's not the case. Same thing if you just subtract it out. If you did any kind of errors with manipulation, let's say you had added 13 and then divided by -2, I could see how it would be flipped and you get no solutions. But the bars are alone and you're less than a positive, there's no real negatives involved once the bars are alone. So that should eliminate clues 1 and 2. The next come down to whether you look at it as an or an and inequality. This is definitely an and inequality. So we're going to choose number 4. So you can see the and versus the or. That's what really throws a lot of people off. Okay, so we choose clue number 4 and we're in Mumbai, India. Okay, wow. So again, going all over the place. This should, I believe, and this should be the order it follows. Again, correct me if I'm wrong. Either way, you will have answers to what's supposed to be going on for all the sectors. All right, so Mumbai, India. Here we go. We're going to have to get the bars alone. So this is tricky because you got to start by minusing the 9. So you get, and remember, the big thing is, we talked about this with trouble in Barcelona. You never distribute into the absolute value bars. It's really important that you don't do that. Okay, so I've got -9 leaves me with -4. Then I'm going to multiply by 2 on both sides. That's going to give me -3x plus 7 in the bars is less than or equal to -8. Then I'm going to have to multiply by -1, multiply by -1. Don't forget that that will flip the direction in addition to making it positive. So that is going to indicate that we have an or inequality, because what numbers have an absolute value greater than or equal to 8? So you could have the numbers that are greater than or equal to 8. Those all have an absolute value more than or equal to 8. But all of the numbers that are less than or equal to -8 also have an absolute value that is greater than 8. So let's solve it out. -7 -7, 3x greater than or equal to 1, divide by 3, divide by 3. X is, and don't forget our or, greater than or equal to 1/3. Here, -7 -7, 3x less than or equal to -15. Divide by 3, divide by 3. X is less than or equal to -5. And don't forget, again, we're going to stick our or in the middle. All right. So let's see which of these are true. So it looks like, and correct me if I'm wrong, got to take a close look to see what we got. So first of all, again, don't forget, you're going to minus the 9 on both sides, giving you the -4. You're going to multiply by 2, giving you the -8. You're going to remember to flip it around. Remember to flip it around when you get the +8. All right. And then you have, you should get 1/3 and -5. Let's see. Did I make a mistake somewhere? This is going to be the tricky part, seeing if I made a mistake somewhere. So the mistake that I made is somehow I got my -7s mixed up with my +7s. So let's go in here. Let's just fix that. So it's a -7, a -7, a -7, and a -7. So that's going to just be a little bit of mix up, but that just means I add rather than subtract. So it means I've got to clear out this bottom. You know what? We all make mistakes. It happens. Just like you, I am not perfect. All right, so let's fix that up. So we add 3x greater than or equal to 15, 3x less than or equal to -1, divide by 3, divide by 3, divide by 3, divide by 3. And I get x is greater than or equal to 5. X is less than or equal to -1/3. And that's what's actually nice about the slides, is that the options, some of them catch you when you make that little mistake. And then you say, hey, none of the clues are true. So what do we do? All right. So x is more than or equal to 5, or x is less than or equal to -1/3. That's going to be clue number 1. No solutions. Again, my take on it is, if you minus the 9 and you don't fully get the bars alone, that might get you to think that. And these other ones are misinterpreting or doing some other kind of miscalculation. So we're going clue 1. Clue 1 brings us to Abakan, Russia. We are deep in the heart of Russia. probably potentially pretty far away from civilization. And I encourage you to look up where Abacan is, and my sincerest apologies if I pronounce anything wrong. So I add 7, I'm at +5, and I divide by -5, divide by -5, and remember, you have to flip the bars. I bet you where people will not get this one right. So now I have an absolute value that's greater than or equal to -1. And because absolute value, no matter what number I plug in, the absolute value will either be positive, or if I plug in 12, will be 0. So it will always be more than a negative number. So infinity, negative infinity to infinity, all real numbers. Okay, no solutions is the other outcome that people will do. I'm going to imagine, and I could be wrong, but I'm going to imagine if you somehow take the bars off in a way that you're not really supposed to, I imagine that that's how you'd end up getting 2 or 4. So you're going to go clue 1. Clue 1 takes us to Sydney, Australia for our final sector. So I'm going to start by getting the bars alone, -17, -17. So -3/4 times 4x minus 8 is greater than or equal to -6. Now I'm going to multiply by -4/3, -4/3. That will cancel out the -3/4. So I get 4x minus 8 because I multiplied by a negative that will flip the sign. And this will be, for whatever reason, really a big fan of 8. Less than or equal to 8. Isn't that crazy? 4/3 of 6 is 8. Believe it or not. All right. Who would have thunk? Okay. So now what numbers have an absolute value that's less than or equal to 8? All of those that are greater than or equal to -8, less than or equal to +8. So I solve by doing +8, +8, +8, which gives me 0, less than or equal to 4x, less than or equal to 16. I divide by 4, divide by 4, divide by 4. I get 0, less than or equal to x, less than or equal to 4. I can check to see if I'm right. If I plug in 0, I get, so let's check this out, right? If I plug in 0, I get -8, whose absolute value is 8. -3/4 of 8 is -6. -6 plus 17 is 11. So in other words, it's just on the cusp. If I plug in 0, that would get me -8, whose absolute value is 8. And again, you end up with being right on that cusp of 11. So the fact that there's no solutions, I'm going to imagine if you just subtracted -17 and said, oh, it's a negative, and even then that wouldn't make sense, but it's possible. It does end up being clue 2, and I'm imagining some kind of math error, some kind of multiplying by the wrong fraction. Maybe you multiply by 3/4. I'm imagining if you did 6 times -3/4, you get something like 4x minus 8 in bars less than or equal to some other number, 3/4 of 6, maybe, not quite sure. But that's like 4.5. So not really sure. But again, another one of those misconceptions. And so clue 2 is going to take us to Carmen. We have caught her successfully, and we are now going to bring her to justice. All right, so folks, I really hope this helps you get an understanding of what was going on in this activity, get a real solid breakdown, not only of the questions, but kind of like the concepts behind them. Thanks so much for watching. Again, feel free to check out my other videos on absolute value equations and inequalities. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you can stay up to date with my newest videos. And remember that you can do it. Thanks again, folks. Don't forget to love math. Have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time.